Hi friends, welcome to Crash Course video series. I'm Sayali Kale. I'm one of the co-founders of Crash Course and an alumna of IIM Ahmedabad. In this particular video, we'll be discussing the CMAT exam. The CMAT notification has come out and we'll be discussing how to exactly go about preparing for the CMAT exam. This is a very important exam and it will give you access to many colleges which accept this particular exam score for their admission process. Since the notification has come out, we have some new information which we need to keep in mind while preparing for the exam. So let's take a look at what the exam is, how to prepare for it, how to go about preparing for it. So firstly, I would like to cover the important dates. The notification came on 16 February and you can fill the application form from 16 February to 17th March. I would recommend filling it early. Being done with it early on, because you do not want to be in the situation where you're filling it at the last minute. So please fill the form as soon as possible and make sure that you have submitted it well before 17th March as such. If there are any errors in the form, you can correct it from there's a small window which will allow you to correct it from 19th March to 21st March. After that, you will be able to download admit cards and the exam date. It's not been announced when the admit cards will be available and when the exam will be, but our best guess is 17th April, which is the Sunday, which is 1 month from the correction forms window. So that is where we assume that the exam would most likely be. It can be either, if it would either be 17th April or 24th April, 10th April would be slightly less likely. So mostly just consider it mentally that it would be around 17th April as such. You would probably get the link to download the admit card some 7 to 10 days before the exam date. So this is about the exam. It will be conducted in 2 shifts. The first shift, this is the same way as it was last time. The first shift will be from 9 AM to 12 noon. That is a morning shift, and then you have the evening shift, which is 3 to 6 as such. So there are 2 shifts. The exam will be of 3 hours. The change in the pattern that has come this time is, earlier what used to happen is that you had 3 hours plus an optional half an hour for the optional section of entrepreneurship and innovation. That section is no longer optional. You have to mandatorily solve questions from that particular section. So remember that section which was earlier optional has now become mandatory, and it has been adjusted as part of the 3 hours. So it will not be 3 hours plus some time. It will be exactly 3 hours. The number of questions have also reduced per section. So now there are 100 questions in 180 minutes, which is 3 hours, and a total of 400 marks. Each question comes with +4 for correct answer, -1 for incorrect answer, and no marks or no penalty for unattempted questions. So that is the marking scheme. The 100 questions are divided as 20 in quant and data interpretation, 20 in logical reasoning, 20 in language comprehension, and 20 in general awareness. And this section, which used to be earlier optional, is now mandatory. It is at par with all the other sections of the exam as such. So there will be 5 sections with 20 marks, 20 questions each, 80 marks each, because each question carries 4 marks and -1 mark for negative marking. There are no sectional time limits. So it is important that in this particular preparation, you give equal emphasis. So if you have already prepared for CAT, you would be okay with like quant and logical reasoning and some amount of language comprehension also. You would already know RCs. So at this point of time, if you're preparing for CMAT after having already prepared for CAT, you need to focus on general awareness and entrepreneurship and innovation. These are the new topics. You should do well in them. Apart from that, whatever is extra, whatever is not part of CAT but part of CMAT exam in logical reasoning, verbal reasoning, etc., we'll be covering in the course. But I want you to have a good sense of the exam before you actually start preparing. What I would recommend you do is please do take a look at CMAT 2021 exam paper. There are 2 shifts, there are 2 exam papers. We have put both of them in PDF format on our website. So please do check them out, because there will be nothing that will give you a good idea or good view of the exam as seeing the actual exam paper. But remember, there's a slight change. So now each of the sections has only 20 questions as such. So because of that, each of these sections is now the cutoffs will be lower, but there will also be a higher emphasis on accuracy, because there won't be as many questions that you can leave in this case. You will have 100 questions, and here in each of them, there won't be a lot of room for error as such. Okay, so you have to remember this slight change will affect what is the required accuracy as such. Okay, now we'll take a look at each of the sections. We'll go section by section. So let's first start with the quant section. So in this particular case, I have just tabulated the questions as they came in CMAT 2021. At that point of time, there were 25 questions per section. So this adds up to 25, but now it will be pared down slightly. So you will see lesser questions, like one-off question removed from each section. But remember, the overall pattern or weightage will remain more or less the same. What we can see over here, or what we can observe over here, is that arithmetic, especially time, speed and distance, averages, ratio, proportion, and profit and loss, there's like a lot of weightage on this particular topic. So it is very crucial that you do well in this particular section. If you do not do well in this particular part of quant section, it will be very, very difficult for you to recover in that particular section. So arithmetic is crucial to cracking quant section. So make sure that you are rock solid in it, especially time, speed and distance, time and work, all of that you should be having a lot of practice of actually solving questions from that particular area. After that, what I see is that the next highest this is given to actually algebra. Unlike CAT, which has a lot of geometry questions, here geometry questions you will have one or two. You will have more questions from algebra. So be more prepared from algebra when it comes to especially quadratic equations and functions and polynomials. You should spend more time on algebra rather than geometry, given the extra emphasis that is there on algebra. Apart from that, you will have some one-off questions from progressions, number systems, sets and counting, and you will also probably get a DI set which is based on tables and charts, so you should be prepared for that. Again, with 20 questions, you would not get a 4-question set on data interpretation. Unlikely, I won't say it is impossible, but it is unlikely. But what can come is a smaller set, a 2-question set, easy set on charts as such. So you should be prepared to at least know how to read charts, how to read pie charts, how to read line charts and bar charts. That is all that is really required. So if you think of it, the strategy should be, you should be rock solid in arithmetic, then focus on algebra. You should be able to read charts, sets and counting, that is PNC essentially. All of these are secondary. The first primary is arithmetic and algebra and knowing charts. If you are able to do that, I think you will be coasting through this particular section. Okay, now let's take a look at the logical reasoning section. There's a lot of subtopics that come in this particular section, and we'll be covering all of that, especially because much of it is beyond CAT portion. For example, analogies, strong arguments, weak arguments. We'll be covering all of that. But remember, what is generally tested is that you have to have good logical reasoning skills, good verbal reasoning skills. A good vocabulary would definitely help in this particular section. And apart from that, you need experience of these type of questions. Remember, if you have just prepared for CAT, you would not have a lot of solving experience with these type of questions, and it is important that you know how to solve them to do well in this particular section. A lot of your peers would not have solved these questions before, and it would mean that that would be the extra edge you can have if you actually know exactly how to go about solving these type of questions. They are not difficult. They are not LR sets of like CAT and ZAT level LR sets and DI sets. They are much simpler, but experience counts for quite a bit while solving these kind of sets. Okay, so you will have your arrangements questions, blood relations, directions, coding, decoding. We'll be covering each and every one of these subtypes. So remember that simple logical reasoning, simple verbal reasoning, simple critical reasoning makes a lot of difference as such. Even visual reasoning is there, statements and conclusions, which are essentially critical reasoning type of questions. Data sufficiency also comes as part of this particular set. Relations between statements, so what is the assertion, what is the reason, is this a valid reason for this assertion? So we'll be covering all of these subtopics in detail, so don't worry about that. But you should remember that the portion for logical reasoning is quite a bit different in CMAT than it is for other exams, and you should be prepared for that. Blood relations, logically related statements, set representation, coded equations. We'll be covering, there'll be like a video for each of that. I want you to make sure that you see each of these videos, because these are not your typical logical reasoning questions, and knowing exactly how to solve each of these subtypes of logical reasoning questions would save you a lot of time in actual exam. And remember, with like 3 hours and 100 questions, every minute matters as such. Okay. Now let us take a look at the language comprehension section. Here basically you have a core of reading comprehension, but you also have many questions based on vocabulary, grammar and sentence correction, fill in the blanks, phrasal verbs, grammar like parajumbles and spelling. So remember that vocabulary would definitely help in this section, but it is still not make or break. You could still pass this section even if you have a poor vocabulary on the strength of reading comprehension and grammar and sentence correction. So if you are somebody who generally is weak at verbal section, I would suggest that focus on reading comprehension and grammar and sentence correction rules. If you get that, you will clear the sectional cutoff. If you are somebody who has done well in vocabulary, make sure you don't miss a single question from that, because vocabulary questions can be done very quickly. You don't need a lot of time to do that, and then you will have a significant edge over your peers if you do well in vocabulary. So you can consider it as 3 parts: reading comprehension, grammar and sentence correction, and then vocabulary, which is based off idioms and phrases, phrasal words, fill in the blanks, spelling, everything which is related essentially to vocabulary. Parajumbles isn't great, isn't a lot of parajumbles, but remember that if you're good at comprehension, reading comprehension, you will do well over here also. So essentially just think of it, what would be your competitive advantage? If you're strong in verbal, do not miss a single part out of this, because you should essentially ace these particular areas of language comprehension. If you're somebody who is not good at vocabulary, who for whom English is not their primary language of thinking, and who doesn't have a if you have not read a lot of books, all of those things where you know that language is a weak point, I would say focus on RCs, parajumbles and grammar and sentence correction. You might think that grammar and sentence correction might be difficult for people who have their English is weak or something like that. But honestly, it is grammar and sentence correction. You just have to remember quite a few basic rules to actually clear it from an exam perspective. This is not about how grammatically correct your normal English is. This is about spotting errors and finding the correctly phrased sentences in a exam scenario, and there you have to just follow a few set of rules. We'll be covering all the rules that you need to follow, like preposition errors, etc., subject verb agreement errors, so you know exactly what to look for when you are actually solving these type of questions. So don't get bogged down by all the details. If you are somebody who is weak in language, focus on these 3 areas. If you are somebody who is strong in English language, make sure that you completely ace the vocabulary section. Now let's take a look at GK. Now the GK section is a mix of static and dynamic. You have a lot of questions which are based on, which are India specific, that is Indian civics, Indian polity, Indian history, Indian geography. So you need to be very strong in that particular area. Also, you need to do a lot of dynamic GK, that is awards and prizes. Who won the Booker Award? Who won the Nobel Peace Prize? So all of the latest prizes and awards you should know, and remember the world events that occurred in the last 1 year, 1.5 years, you should know properly. Any of the world organizations that are there, like say head of UN, WHO, etc., you should know. Who are the different heads of the organizations, you should know. You should know who are the heads of state. All of that is essential information when it comes to solving questions of this type. Now also you should cover the major sports trophies. So if you know that, okay, in this particular sport, say start with football, there are these particular awards, these are particular trophies, and these were the results, you should remember them. Then go to cricket, say these were the tournaments that were played, these were the awards, and this is the different like rankings, test rankings, etc. So you might need to remember those parts of sports as such. So just remember the results in sports, the awards in sports, and any major trophies that are there. Also remember India specific sports, such as who won the Arjuna Award, who won the all these specific India sports specific information also is very important. Okay, Indian fiscal policy and taxation, you should definitely read the budget. If there are any changes in the budget, they might actually come as trivia questions in the GK section. Any changes to taxation rules, GST rules, everything of that sort might actually come in the GK portion. Indian polity, Indian rules, India specific content comes quite a bit. So even your preparation should have that India specific content or angle to the preparation. Also general science questions come basically based on like biology, simple biology, simple physics also actually come as part of general knowledge. So here basically if you have interest in that, you should know, or you should basically try to figure out based on the previous year's papers what are the common areas that are asked. You can't possibly revise entire general science, but you can revise the specific areas that have been asked in the past few years. Art and culture, particularly Indian culture, music, dance, who passed away recently, trivia about them, all of that can be actually something that can come in the paper. Geography, capitals, currencies, major geographical markers. When I say major geographical markers, I mean deserts, plateaus, mountain ranges, rivers. These are the basically terrain kind of geographical markers that can be asked. So you can be asked which is the world's highest desert, which is the world's longest river. All of those things are essentially what you should know as far as general knowledge is concerned. Okay, now let's take a look at the last thing, which is the innovation and entrepreneurship section. This section is now mandatory. It is no longer optional. You have to answer 20 questions from this particular section. Now, these 20 questions will be split into two parts. There will be one RC based on this, and then there will be like general knowledge questions based on entrepreneurship and innovation. The RC will generally, earlier with 25 questions, there was like a 8-9 question RC. But now, because you have only 20 questions, I expect a 7 to 8 question RC based on entrepreneurship. You will be given a very long essay, and this essay would also have the theme of entrepreneurship. How do you encourage entrepreneurship? What does an entrepreneur need? What should venture capital firms look for when they are looking for investment? What should angels do when they are investing in a startup? So basically the theme will be startups, innovation, entrepreneurship, and you will have basic reading comprehension questions based on that theme. So look at it like you would look at any reading comprehension, but just that the theme you know beforehand is going to be entrepreneurship. So if you know that the theme is going to be entrepreneurship, if you have read up on that topic a bit, it would help you quite a bit in understanding the jargon surrounding entrepreneurship. That is, what is the valuation of a startup, what is a unicorn, what is GMV, what is the draft red herring prospectus, all of those basic things that if you know what is an IPO, all those things, if you know about entrepreneurship and innovation, if you know the jargon, if you know the terms related to it, it would become easier for you to read the RC, and secondly, it would also help you in this particular section, which is also related to entrepreneurship as such. So also know that in general knowledge based questions, know which are the biggest startups in India, who are the entrepreneurs behind it, who are the founders. If anyone has raised any money recently and has been in the news for like raising money or going for a founding round or has acquired another company, you should know that. Basically, A acquires B, you should know both of the who has acquired whom. And any buzzword or business jargon when it is related to entrepreneurship, you should know. So you should know what is fintech, what is edtech, what is any of those kind of business jargons that are related to this, you should know as such. Process, also one of the things that is often asked is basically the process of starting up. That is, what kind of company do you have to register, when you are registering your company, what kind of registration companies are there, what is a proprietorship, what is a public company, what is a private company. So you should know the basics of starting up as such. How do you start a company? How do you go about raising funding? So people make a pitch deck, they make a minimum viable product, they make a investor pitch. They go about and pitch to investors, investors give them feedback, they iterate, change their product, etc., etc. So there's a process involved in starting up, and you should know that process very well to be able to answer questions based on that. Also, you should know about any government initiatives that are there that support startups. For example, there will be like SME loan schemes like the Mudra schemes and the Startup India, Stand Up India kind of. There will be different initiatives that the government of India does to support startups. You should know what those initiatives are, when they were launched, what is the qualifying criteria for availing help under the initiative, how much help is given. All of those details you should know when it comes to starting up. The startup rankings also you should know, basically that which are the highest ranked or who has raised the most funding. All of those basic things you should know when it comes to innovation and entrepreneurship. Also, I remember that the general knowledge based area would be should be the second biggest focus. The first biggest focus where you can definitely determine to do better or like have a higher accuracy rate is the reading comprehension based section, because that is pure RC, and I am sure that with pure RC and simple RC, most people can get a better accuracy rate than in pure GK. So focus first on this area and also read upon these areas, but here your accuracy won't be as high as it would be in this. The RC is going to be simple. I fully expect people to be able to answer all questions correctly from this particular RC. So this is the different sections that are there in CMAT exam. Remember, the best way that you can start your preparation is to actually see the CMAT 2021 papers. So please download both Shift 1 and Shift 2 papers and see, like scan through them, try to answer them. You need not solve every single question, but if you just see each question, you will get a sense of what is asked. Even though the length of the exam has reduced, the number of questions has reduced, you will still get a good sense of what is exactly asked in the exam. Okay, so please do that. And in this particular course that we will be having, we will be covering every single thing that I just discussed in detail. So every single new part of logical reasoning, verbal reasoning, language comprehension, quant and data interpretation, single thing will be covered. So please make sure that you see every single concept video, you take every single concept test. This is an exam that can be aced very well. The key is how quickly can you solve. And how quickly can you solve depends on how many of that questions have you seen before. So please make sure that you see every concept and you take every concept test. So now that you have seen this video, please continue to watch every single video of this particular CMAT series. It is extremely important that you watch and practice from this particular course thoroughly. Thank you for tuning in.